Chase Oyaki here at the Blue Futon. And you know what? $3 Saturday, I saw multiple movies. I saw what I haven't seen, and the only other two movies I really haven't seen was Spider-Man, the very good fun edition with 11 more minutes, or which is probably going to go on 4K like in the next 5 months, so just prepare for that. Or Gigi and Nate, no clue what it was. I said, you know what? Give me some Gigi and Nate, some monkey action, and a paraplegic. That sounds kind of wrong. So Gigi, what's it about? It's a pretty simple premise. There's a 18-year-old kid who decides to jump off a cliff, right? And something bad happens. I won't tell you what bad happens. You're probably thinking, oh, I know what it is. You kind of don't. He becomes paralyzed. 4 years later, you know what? He's not doing good. His therapy isn't doing as well as he thought he would. His family's down on luck. So he said, you know what? Let's get a service animal, and it is a monkey. And so now we have a bond between a paraplegic and a monkey, and shenanigans ensues, but not in a good way as you think happens. So did I like this movie? This is a very heartwarming movie, and it hit me to the core because there's actually some scenes in this movie that gave me chills because it actually happened to me in real life. Not the monkey part, but the hospital scenes with the daughter or with the sister and the brother, and some dialogue stuff where I'm like, that's almost, I want to say it's verbatim because I had a scene in real life where, you know, looking into someone's eyes, and it was kind of a seizure, and they couldn't talk, so you could only like stare into their eyes and hope they recognize who you are. And this kind of had that scene in it, so I cried. I cried pretty hard because that happened to me in real life. So let's continue on with the positives because that's what we're going with, is the story, the message, the acting, and I do think this is a well thought out movie for anyone that has an open mind and open heart should enjoy this film. You have like Jim Belushi, you have a star-studded cast in this one, and it is a greatly acted movie, greatly directed. It's written pretty well, and just the scenarios are top notch. Where it does falter a little bit is the pacing in the second act of the movie, which has to do with the party. I feel like that scene and some of the scenes before it dragged on for a little bit, especially this dog scene and the monkey chase around the house. I know it was like kind of a comic relief, and even with the movie Dog, they kind of did the same thing with at the weed farm. And it was, you could call it was needed, but I feel like they should have stepped back and made it a little bit more serious or more about it, because this is really two movies. The first movie is getting the relationship between Gigi and Nate, and the last half of the movie, which, like I said, I've never seen a single trailer, was this animal activist group, which are a bunch of fucking Karens, in my opinion, where they are miserable. They are miserable in their life, so they feel like since I'm miserable, I have to make everyone around me miserable. And that rings true to so many people in today's day and age. Like, they're not fulfilled with life. So they're mad. So know what they're going to do? They're going to make you mad. They're going to say, you know what? I'm suffering, so you have to suffer. And it feels like this movie does it, and it does it extremely well at the very, like, last 20 minutes of this movie. And I'm like, fucking Karens, fucking people, stop making other people miserable because you're miserable. And that's a good message. I do wish they fleshed out one of his friends from the beginning of the movie, because there's a friend at the beginning of the movie. He's wheelchair bound, and 4 years later, the friend disappears. But at the very end, they kind of do the final dinner scene, and he's back in that scene or back in the family. So I do wish that character had a little bit more meat to this movie. But, I mean, it's a small nitpick, but I do think if they added that friend element instead of focusing on the party and some other things, it would have been a little bit better movie and just more cohesiveness with the family and friends aspect of the film. And finally, one last negative for this movie would be the CGI of the monkey. Sometimes it was really noticeable of when it switched from the real monkey to a CGI monkey, especially the party scene. You know they can't have a real monkey, so that looked very fake, as well as the scene where the Nate is trying to do physical therapy and the monkey is moving the items for him. You could tell that's also a fake monkey, and it did take me out of the story a little bit, just knowing that it was fake, and it was very noticeable. But I think this hit me to the core, because like I said, there's a scene in this shot where he is having a seizure, if you want to put it that way, and she's like, I don't give you permission to die. Unfortunately, with my real life thing that happened, I couldn't have that option because my sister, she had a seizure because of cancer and everything like that, and her head was going back and forth against the pillow and doing that. Her hair was falling out, even worse without chemo, a tube in her throat and stuff like that. And it was kind of a weird thing where I decided I'll just lay my head next to hers. And for about 10 minutes, she kind of stopped moving her head. And we were just, eye to eye for quite some time. And about 10 minutes later, I think I hate to say emptiness came back. And then she went back to her moving her head back and forth, which must be horrible because the tube down her throat must. Yeah, that's how you know that you don't. Yeah, that people don't know struggle unless they really experience it. And you have these people that are so miserable and they think they're miserable, but they really haven't experienced heartache or hardship. And so they just think the most minute thing is the fucking ramped up to a 10 of pain to suffering. And it's like the worst thing possible when it's no shit, probably a 2. It is probably a 2, but they ramp up to a 10 because they've lived such a cush life that they think they know everything. So this movie is a great message. Is it overlong? Yes, it shouldn't have been almost a 2-hour movie. They cut out about 15 minutes of that middle like fun part. I think they should have put more meat to the bone with like how it relates to the military, because there are military messages in this movie with amputees, service animals. And I think that if they would have gone that route a little bit more, it would have been a more crisper movie. But overall, Gigi and Nate has a very strong message. It connected me hardcore with people in today's day and age. It's hard for me to talk about. I am writing a script about it. I want to make like the first 100% like true story where nothing's fabricated and just tell the fucking meat and bones of everything. The hard one to write because even with this story about her doing the college thing while like the family had to deal with taking care of a person, that's the same with me. I was at college, only home 3 weeks at a time, so I was almost sheltered from it. And yeah. So Gigi and Nate will receive a 4 out of 5 of Futon. Equals at 80%. So see the Critics' News scores gave this one. It might be the biggest gap I've ever seen for a movie. Critics, a 22% with 23 of them. Audience score, a 98% with over 100. That is a 77% difference. Please show me a movie where it's this fucking drastic, no critic consensus. Now I'm curious. Richard Roper gave it a 3 out of 4. Here's one. Unfortunately, the final stretch of the movie becomes a riff on God's Not Dead through PETA AFAB. What's AFAB? Becomes a cartoon courtroom villain instead of liberal academia. Oh, so AV Crib is a liberal. Okay, I'm sorry. A liberal butthole. He's a Karen. This guy's a fucking Karen. Isn't it kind of weird like that C word? If I put it that way. Like it is so bad here, but in like the UK, it's told like it's a normal fucking word. It's so weird. So that guy didn't like it because it had an anti-liberal agenda. So yeah. So if you are a liberal, you're probably gonna hate this movie. I guess that's what it's true. 22, 80, 98. Chase out with the Blue Futon. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think is Bluetonian. You Bluetonians. Thank you for watching and have a fantastic day. I probably had to blurt out that C word multiple times. Yeah.